Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 440 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ianlon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I'm already feeling overwhelmed with all the global politics at the moment. With the presidential elections coming on us fast, we need more ways to connect and bridge this divide in our country more than ever. Our next guest is going to help us get there. Marjorie Hope graduated from Salisbury University and obtained postgraduate certifications from the London School of Economics and Harvard University. As a competitive gymnast, she owned and operated a large gymnastics school, embraced the synergy between mind, body, and spirit, while incorporating the importance of being fit for life and that more is possible. In 2016, she founded America Connected, an international, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization teaching people around the world how to connect through cultural diplomacy. They embrace an entirely nonpartisan, nonpolitical, and proactive approach to bringing people of the world closer together and discovering that they share much more in common than what separates them. Welcome to the show, Margie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And I think this conversation is just so timely with everything that's happening, global politics, not just in the United States, but really all over the world. You know, we start thinking about the Middle East. We start thinking about what that means on college campuses today. And the temperature is high. You know, I'm not going to lie about it. I mean, the temperature is very, very high in this country. But, you know, I think we should go all the way back to your undergraduate experience because you decided on Salisbury University. I absolutely love the students at that institution. I've spoken there multiple times with their fraternity and sorority community, and I found that, you know, the students there just have excellent values. And so I really appreciated that quite a bit. Why did you decide that Salisbury was the place for you?
You know, Michael, I felt the first time I ever went to visit Salisbury that it was just home. It's not only a beautiful campus, it's just amazing how nice everybody was, but I also liked the ability of the small classes that they offered. And I felt it just felt like everything coming at you sensory-wise, the way it looked, the way everybody acted, the way they offer everything. And so, yeah, it was an amazing experience.
I love that. That's really, really great. And obviously, it was the right decision because here you are, very, very successful. I mean, you were a competitive gymnast. You also owned and
Yeah.
operated a large gymnastics school for over 5 years. Talk to our audience a little bit about what is the significance of gymnastics in promoting health.
Well, you have to remember balancing the combination of mind, body, and spirit. And that is really our holistic cornerstone of well-being. You have to remember nurturing your mind involves continuous learning all the time. When you're finished college, you're not done. You're going to be learning all the time. And gymnastics gives you that ability to keep flexible, where life's going to throw you all sorts of things. But if you've got that flexibility or the strength from having trained with gymnastics, you'll be able to handle everything that comes at you. Not saying it's going to be fun, but you'll have that cardio from the gymnastics and working out to keep going and keep handling this everything and anything that can come at you as you go through life.
Wow, I like that holistic approach there. That's really, really good. Not just physical health, but you're also alluding to kind of the mental health aspects of it.
Yeah,
So I,
and it's cultivating a strong, healthy mind, body attitude, which you can take everywhere in your life.
yeah. You talk about the importance of circles in your life. What do you mean by that? And how can college students create these circles that you're talking about?
Okay. One thing people do as they get older is they tend to narrow their circle of friends. The opposite is what you need to be doing. Having groups of circles in your life is important for several reasons. The support and encouragement circles of friends and groups can provide you don't, for example, you don't want to just have political friends or just school friends. As you meet people, they can become a new circle. Perhaps it's somebody that's in a church group or someone that's a neighbor, and you meet their friend and their friend. But it's the diverse perspectives you get from this and the social connection, the collaboration, the teamwork. It's very important in your life. And as you go through every step in your life, those circles are going to be there for your support.
That's a really, really well said. And I'm actually talking to my daughter about that right now. She's trying to choose which college she's going to go to. And that really is kind of the focus of college, is to increase those circles, increase that network, because all those people that you meet, these are going to be people that potentially have jobs, internships, all kinds of opportunities. They could be customers of yours, they could be suppliers of yours. It's hard to know where we go from here, but increasing the size of those circles, I think, is really critical.
And And I think the circles also help that when you go to college, you're not just going for an education. Of course, the education's important,
Right.
but it's more than that. It's being able to broaden your thought process, learning about life. And those are skills that I believe college teaches you, that the real life isn't going to necessarily bother teaching you that. And you've got to be able to be open to the newness and new ideas that are around us. And that's what's so cool about college.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, obviously, on a college campus, you're going to meet all different kinds of people from all different places in life, certainly different political leanings. That's certainly going to happen as well. But you know what? I mean, when you go out and you work, in corporate life, you're going to have to work with people from all places and all
Exactly.
political beliefs. And you got to figure out, how am I going to work with these people? How am I going to get maximum production from this team, no matter where they come from, no matter what their beliefs are? So I think it's really kind of preparing you for what's ahead. And just like you said, you have to be open to new ways of thinking. So,
Yeah, you have to find what connects you, what brings you together.
totally agree there. Now, social media certainly has its share of positives and negatives. Right now, the country is trying to figure out, what are we going to do with TikTok, talking about perhaps the sale of this organization to someplace other than China ownership. Do you find that social media is a connector, or is it a disconnector?
I believe it can be both, but social media offers you, and this is part of the problem why it can disconnect. It offers you so much more and so many different ideas. Um, the problem with social media often happens when individuals seek validation and acceptance and a sense of belonging. So they find this group, hey, they're just like me, they're saying the same thing I'm saying. And you try to fit in because we want to, as humans, fit in. The problem comes when a red flag happens. Politics is a perfect example. You think they're your friends. You've been reacting and acting back and forth for several months now, and now you see that same person saying something that you know is not right. Those red flags are warning signs and indicators of potential problems. And they've done studies on this, Michael, that they found that people, when they saw this, didn't know how to get out, because psychologically, if I got in, then there must be something wrong with me, because, well, how can I get out? This is the group that likes me. This is the group that wants me to go and do things with them. So maybe they're not so bad. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's not, and you have to have a strong sense of self to say to yourself, that's a red flag. It isn't right. And by the way, I had this happen to me. I had a very large Facebook social media group, and I had realized over the last political session that we had, that it wasn't exactly what I was still believing in. And I thought, well, division is not what we need. We need unity. So I kind of mentioned a few things on my posts, and I actually got death threats, believe it or not, from these things, because the people were so aghast that, one, I had been so involved. How could I dare say these things? But again, it's the connection I found originally through this that I realized that maybe it was disconnecting us. So what I'm saying is, in TikTok, for example, I really do believe it's more of a connector. Sorry to go off tangent, but TikTok is such an educational experience. Of people that don't like it would really look at it and say, wow, it's not just teaching you history. It's maybe teaching you about a dress that you never knew was out there. And gee, I like that dress. Or gee, that's interesting how relationships work, because I can see this on this particular, person's TikTok. Or we had a hurricane, for example, in Florida a few years back, and it actually showed you for the first time what somebody's actually going through step by step during that hurricane, and your heart just goes out. Bigger thing, October 7th, when Israel and the Hamas, we actually got to see people that were hiding in hiding places in their secure spots before they were taken. Actually, this was all filmed. It was amazing, very sad, very scary, but TikTok is more of an educator and more of a connector. Yes, we do have to have some safeguards on this, and of course that's important, but look, you hit a keyboard, a stroke on your keyboard, somebody can track you that way too. So we do have to be careful, but connecting is so important.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were on social media and you saw some red flags. What should students do if they see that red flag from somebody they're connected to?
Well, first, what you've got to do is step back and think, what's going on here? This was my friend, or I thought this was my friend. Go back to where, and take a step back, go back to where you found something in common. Maybe it was music that you listened to. Go back and start talking about that music. Or you can actually say, hey, let's go get something to eat. But food is a very common way of connecting people. But you've got to find what that common, thing was, and then you can perhaps, if it starts to come up again, start digressing from that. And if it doesn't stop, if it gets worse, you have to have that sense of self and say, I know this is wrong. And if you can't stop this, I'm going to leave this group. And that's hard, but you will be glad you did it. And you have to have that confidence to do it, and you will meet other people. But again, before you get to that part, find what you have in common. You had something in common to begin with. That's what brought you into that group and into that situation. You can try that first.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head there. That's why we call it the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I always believe that food just brings people together, even if you're coming at a problem from different directions or different angles or different lenses. We can both agree on good food. It's like, so that
Yeah.
does bring people together. And I hope that people will use that as a tool to ultimately connect with other students on college campuses. I hope. You run this nonprofit. It's called America Connected. Talk to our audience. What does this nonprofit do?
So America Connected is connecting people, nations, and people around the world together. A great example of that is I had a group right before the pandemic I took to India. And the place we were supposed to do yoga with them to connect, I forget what had happened to them. So I had to find a new place. And the lady was very hesitant. She said, look, you can come, but the only way is if you all do not even mention politics. I said, of course, no problem. So we got there, and she was polite, a little cool, but for some, I'm not really sure why. But after 1 hour while we were there doing, our yoga with this group, she came over to me and said, whatever you're doing the rest of the day, I want you to come with us. We're going to show you the real India. And all of a sudden, everything changed. Now, what changed? Her perceived notions of what Americans were perhaps like when she actually met us. She found that we were nice, we were engaging, we were fun to be with, we were all laughing, we were all learning. And she showed me, could never have done this on my own, a spot which we had to hike a long time up a long trail. It was very hot. And by the way, as we did this, a cow got into the path. Can you imagine hiking on a trail and this big cow stops in the middle? Well, cows are sacred in India. So I'm sitting there going, okay, what do I do? I hope this cow is nice. But anyways, it was a funny story. But we get there, and it's called, forgive me for saying it wrong, Shamandalaya. 4 corners that have been there for over 1,000 years, with a church, a Hindu temple, a mosque, and a synagogue. Never had a problem. Why were they so different in their ideologies, but yet they are for so long? Because they respected each other. And that respect, and that's the same thing we need to do with each other, that respect kept them going, and it kept them together. But it was just such a wonderful experience of what happens when you connect with people. And you see, I always say this, people are people.
Yeah. With this upcoming election, it got me thinking because a few years back, when we had the last political election, I was actually speaking on a college campus in New York, and just a very liberal place. And one of the students of a sorority, she came up to me after the program, complimented me on the program, but said that she had a problem in that really she was kind of the only conservative thinker within her group. And essentially, her sisters basically said that she did not, she was not allowed to voice any of her political opinions because they felt that it was going to prevent new members from joining the organization if she voiced her opinions politically. So she was essentially muzzled on a college campus about talking about what she believes in, although she cares very much for her sisters, right? And we can see the opposite happening as well, too. I think it goes both ways.
Right.
So, I mean, so what do we do when we see political divisions in groups that we belong to, such as fraternities and sororities on a college campus?
Well, first of all, there's a big difference between talking politics and talking what you believe in and talking about your belief system. So if you, for example, go out and said, I like so-and-so, we need to all vote for so-and-so because blah, 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 that's getting political. But if you go out and say, hey, look, you guys, let's just take immigration, for example. I believe we ought to be doing such and such for immigration because blah, blah, blah. That's a little bit different. Now you're voicing a reason that you can reason with somebody. It doesn't mean they're going to agree with you, and you got to have that temperature reading. You have to be able to say, hey, these guys are not liking what I'm saying. Again, it's respect. I kind of voiced my opinion. I kind of threw it out there. I get this feeling something's not right. They're not liking me. So I'm just not going to talk about that anymore. Again, go back and find out, hey guys, let's go get a drink over at such and such because we had a great time last time. We were all laughing and dancing. Okay, that reset, I call it the great reset. It resets you back to being connected with each other. You're not going to be able to change the world, but can you get your opinions out and your ideas? Of course you can. And that's what college is all about. College is that time to get out your opinions and your ideas. And you may find that what you go into college thinking that you know or thinking what you believe in, it will totally change. I think about my college years, and the best things I remember are something, for example, one professor said to me, he goes, you could be like the Renaissance man. I'm like, what? And he was saying this to a group of us. And he said, well, in the Renaissance man, you might have been a dentist, and then you were a lawyer, then you were a farmer. And I thought about it because you don't have to be just one thing. In college, you get overwhelmed thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to be? It's the rest of my life. It's not. You're going to change throughout your life. Now, we know this as adults. We've changed many times since we were in college. But to a college student, I would say, don't worry about it. Do what you think you like, and it will grow, and you will change what you want to do. But it's not going to be something you consciously think about. You're just going to find your place as you go through life. It's a step-by-step process.
That's good advice. I really like that. And I mean, speaking of fraternities and sororities, I mean, I'm doing my dissertation on those groups. And in the research, I mean, you clearly see the reason why fraternities and sororities started well over 100 years ago was really to have debate. It was because the universities at the time really didn't want to talk about topics outside of, let's say, religion, for example. I mean, there were a lot of ministers, going to, get their education, for example, at that time around religion. And they just didn't want to talk about the topics of the day. So the students said, okay, then we're going to take that conversation. We'll take it off campus and we'll have it in our fraternity house off campus 100 years ago. And we'll debate. We'll debate those topics. So I think it's important to not lose that. I think that debate, is really critical to helping our country move forward. So it is really kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think fraternities and sororities are a great example because why do you join it to begin with? You've joined because, and there's so many, right, at each campus, they all have different things to offer, but you chose one for whatever the reason, because that's what you wanted. So as you're in and go through that experience, you may find yourself changing your ideas and maybe not liking everything they're doing. And that is okay. That's part of the learning process. But then you have to go back and say, why did I join to begin with? Oh, yeah, my friend was in there. My father graduated from there. This was a part of a family thing, but find their commonalities because it is okay to disagree. It is okay to dislike things. But again, it's the respect that we have for each other and the respect for that group. And originally, sororities and fraternities started because school was just academic. It
Yeah.
was just, these are the lessons that we're teaching. And so students wanted a social
Mhm.
activity, and that's kind of how they started too. But it's okay to change your mind. That's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. I do think these organizations put you into close proximity with other students that do have different political beliefs. And I think that's a good thing. I think it makes you more well-rounded. And you don't necessarily
Yeah.
have to agree with everybody in the world. It's totally okay. But I think listening and hearing it from somebody else's viewpoint who has, different experiences throughout childhood, I think is really, really important. It just makes you more well-rounded. Maybe you're going to come around to their way of thinking, or perhaps the opposite is true. Maybe you're going to be more firm in your belief, which might be different, and that's okay. But I think college is really that time to kind of figure these things out. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend actually who works with us who is in college,
Yeah.
and he's experiencing a lot of what you're talking about. So he went in thinking everything his parents told him was the way he should think. And they actually pretty much told him that. But he has been voicing to me saying, "Hey, what do I do? I don't agree with anything my parents are thinking about politically." And I'm like, that's okay. You're growing, you're learning, you're finding your way. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's a confusion that you're going to find as you grow because your ideas will change. And I think that's part of educating yourself.
Yeah, good points there. You wrote the book Connect Diplomacy, Using Our Differences to Connect. And in there, you talk about the lost art of the family dinner. I'm really kind of fascinated by this as a parent of two kids who are actually on the opposite ends politically, which is kind of interesting. So, why is the family dinner so important?
Well, in the past, family dinners served as a vital avenue for open communication. It was a time where kind of like thoughts and concerns could be freely expressed. But what it did is it gave a sense of connection among the family members. But in today's kind of all about me society, it seems like it is vanishing to a point. Economic pressures, both parents working, it leaves little time for sitting down together and engaging in the meaningful conversation. But a lot of people also have turned to digital distractions like video games, social media. Uh, it hinders a genuine interaction. And the decline of family dinners, it has far-reaching consequences, affecting the ability of individuals to communicate effectively and emphasize with others. And I've actually been at meetings, like a dinner meeting, a lunch meeting, where somebody takes out their phone and they're looking at their emails, and I will actually say something and say, "Excuse me, are you with them or with me?" And it's a meeting or a social activity, but I think people actually have to be reminded you're with a human being now, not with that. And it's something that we're kind of trying to find our way because really is relatively new, all of these problems. But sitting down together to eat a meal is something that, oh, and by the way, in thousands of years ago, when people were all fighting each other in different countries, the first thing they would do is say, "Let's have a meal," because you had to put your sword down in order to have a meal together. And so that brokered the conversation, and you could start to find the commonality there. "Hey, this food is pretty good," or "Gee, you actually are a pretty nice person," and they didn't raise their sword back up. So yeah, it's important.
That's fascinating. Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me when I go out to a restaurant to eat and I see a big family and everybody is on their devices. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
what a
that's
missed
not good.
opportunity we're seeing right here. Oh, goodness. All right. And you started talking about the importance of connecting nations, right? And I think this is becoming more and more difficult today with it seems like the general flow of politics right now internationally is geared towards internal strength. It's geared towards nationalism. It's geared towards patriotism instead of maybe kind of the view of yesteryear, which is helping others or being concerned about problems in other areas of the world. So, why do you feel that connecting nations is so important?
Well, first of all, I find from my experience, a lot of it is fear,
Mm.
false evidence appearing real. And what happens is people are just naturally afraid of change. And so they start to get fearful, like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to do what you're doing. You might take us over, we might not agree. And you might not agree, but that is okay too. You think about when you were a kid, if you had brothers and sisters and on their birthday they got toys and you were excited because that just meant more toys for you to play with. It's the same thing with nations. When we connect with each other, we have so much more. There is a gem in every single conversation or networking opportunity with another nation. In my book, Connect Diplomacy, I actually had people write me from all over the world. I had a friend of a friend and people I knew all over the world, and they all wrote in and they said the same thing. And there's actually 60 countries, but 100, it was over 100 that wrote in. And I was amazed at how each one said, we need to connect in order to find peace and have our world. But broken English, different ways of saying it, but that was all the same. And people are people because a lot of times our institutions like NATO, the United Nations, there's hundreds and hundreds, they're government oriented. But when you actually talk to people, they will tell you the same thing. We just want to connect and have respect. And one other thing I'll tell you, I had a girl from Iran, the country Iran, write me and say, I will only tell you something for your book if you will put in writing that you will never use my name or I can be killed. I wrote back and said, of course. And in the book, I have name withheld per request. And she wrote a beautiful paragraph of how we should connect and why she wants to connect. And there's actually a guy on TikTok that he actually goes to all of these countries that normally we wouldn't go to for safety reasons and shows you how amazing the experience is and the people are so nice to him. Now, of course, he's about a 6'2" man and he's married to a woman that I believe is from one of the countries, but he's able to show you through the food and the different beauty of the countries he's in that we really should all connect because this is our world. We don't have any other world to go to yet. It's just one planet. And so we have to connect with each other. Again, not agreeing with everybody, but find what we have in common, what we each can bring to the table.
I love it. Really, really good stuff. This has been a great conversation and very helpful. If our listeners, if they want to pick up a copy of your book, it's called Connect Diplomacy, Using Our Differences to Connect, or perhaps they want to connect with you and have you as a resource, where should they go to connect with you?
Well, the book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But if you want to connect with me, if anything I can help you with, anytime, Connect Diplomacy, we can do Marjorie Hope at connectdiplomacy.com. And I will be happy to get back to everyone that writes me.
Fantastic. Marjorie Hope at connectdiplomacy.com. And Marjorie spells her name
Correct.
MarjorieHope at connectdiplomacy.com. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for all of this great information, Margie. This has been just fantastic. And thank you for what you do in connecting the world.
Thank you, Michael. It's been great. Thank you.
Of course. And to our listeners, if you found this conversation with Margie to be helpful, I want you to like it and I want you to share it with other college students that need to hear Margie's words today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.